All the things they tell you not to do, I did. I did go out on my own. I did have a lot of male friends, some of whom I barely knew, who were a lot older than me, and nothing ever went wrong. And I got so lucky, but so many of my friends were not. If you're at a party and there's no one around you that looks trustworthy, I don't give a shit if you look up to these people, if you want to be a part of these people's scene. I don't think that is your place, and I don't think those are your people. The victim blaming thing makes me so angry because, you know, the portrait that is painted of great victims is that, you know, they're messy girls, they're messy drunken girls who don't care and all of this. And it couldn't be further from the truth in the girls that I know that it's happened to. They didn't know how trusting you get when you're drunk. Then they end up in a room where no one can hear them scream. If you're autistic and you're awkward and you're not good at making friends, you can still go out and you can still have an amazing time and you can find your people. But the flip side of that if you're there by yourself, you have to be your own guard dog, and you do have to be quite paranoid. So hello, you wonderful citizen of cyberspace, and welcome to a video about staying safe in goth clubs, raves, that kind of place, particularly if you've gone there on your own, or if you're young, or if you're with people you don't know very well. All of these situations, and I do have to give you a bit of a trigger warning for this video, talking about rape and sexual assault and that sort of thing a little bit. I'm not going into any heavy details about any of that. This is kind of my tips for trying to avoid getting into those situations, because it occurs to me that I get a lot of comments and messages from young people saying like, oh, I'm about to go to my first goth club soon, or I've just been to it, or I'm just getting onto the rave scene. You know, and I've always been quite encouraging about, like, if you don't have goth friends where you are, or you don't have friends into your kind of music, just go to these places alone. You will make friends. It will be fine. And then I saw a video on TikTok tonight about a young girl who went to this party with these people that she clearly did not know very well, but she thought she could trust. And this party devolved into her getting very wasted. She thinks she was roofied. I think she probably was. And it essentially ended in her being raped. And I thought, I think I need to say something here to anyone who has read my autobiography, Millennium Gothic, and who might be following in those footsteps and going out to clubs on their own and all of these things that I did. And I got so lucky because I did so many of the things they tell you not to do. You know, I did go out on my own. I did have a lot of male friends, some of whom I barely knew, who were a lot older than me. I was very, very scantily clad most of the time. I would let guys go further with me than I really wanted them to. Not even to mention the modelling stuff, that I used to go to modelling shoots with photographers who I'd literally just communicated with online. I didn't know them from Adam. This was before you could share your location, before you could get an Uber. I didn't take a chaperone. I just went to meet these creepy guys, stripped down to my underpants, and let them take pictures of me, and nothing ever went wrong. And I got so lucky. But I do think there is also an element of some of the things that I did were the right things to do. And some of the things that my friends have done who have not been as lucky as me, I feel like are quite good examples of what not to do, because these are the way that predatory guys will get hold of you. Obviously not to place any blame on the victims who've done these things, because it is never your fucking fault, no matter what you did, and no matter like how, you know, easy or hard you made it for someone to get you into that car or get you into that bedroom or whatever it was not your fault, any more than going to see a friend at a friend's house and them saying, do you want a cup of coffee? And you say, no, I don't want any coffee. And then they throw a pot of scalding hot coffee in your face. No one is going to say to you, well, clearly you should have just accepted the coffee. Like, no, the person who does the violent thing, who is acting like the psychopath, it is 100% on them. It is not on you for saying no, or for being drunk, or for being scantily clad, or for any of the other things. That, as I say, I have done all of these things and I was just lucky, but so many of my friends were not. And some of them are still with us, and some of them are not still with us. Some of them, it broke to that degree that they are no longer with us. Getting into the things I did that I think were the right thing to do and that kept me safe, and how you can kind of alternate this to fit your circumstances. The main thing I think that kept me safe from grape was that I have always been a really big control freak. And I know that sounds weird for someone who is like a polydrug addict, but addiction for me has actually been a part of control. It's been about controlling my emotions. I can take this and then I won't feel this way. So in terms of my control freakiness and going out, I do not like feeling out of control when there are people around me who I do not 100% trust. So although I am a giant drug addict, have been an alcoholic, have been all of these things, I would never, ever, ever get completely shit-faced in a club or at a rave or any of these things, not unless I was with someone that I trusted 100%, usually a boyfriend, so that they would be stuck to my side all the time, and they would be the one who would get me home whatever state I was in. That was the one and only time that I would ever trust getting totally blotto in any kind of nightclub type situation. And that was very rare. That was like whenever I had a boyfriend who was into doing those things with me and who would come out with me. But the majority of the time that I was raving and going out clubbing and all of that, I did not have that. Therefore, I would stay at like a certain level of high until I got home, and then I would get crazy with shit once I had no one around me that I didn't trust, or once I'd got back to an after party with people I trusted. That is when I would get messy. The main thing though, obviously, was that for a lot of the time that I was going out, I would drive myself there and I would drive myself back, which meant that as far as drinking went, I could not, beyond my 2 shots maximum UK driving limit, I would have my 2 shots and that would be it. And that is frustrating. Like, I will say that is frustrating. It does nix like a lot of the craziness of going out. Like, a lot of the fun and a lot of the craziness of going out is getting kind of wasted and having those interactions in the bathroom with these other wasted girls. And it is a tough one, because if you're kind of sober and they are blotto, it's not fun. They are very, very annoying. Drunk people are very, very, very annoying to be around when you are not drunk. So generally speaking, if you're going out and you're not drinking or you're not really drinking, you probably won't be in the club until closing time, because the drunk people will get on your nerves. So you miss out on a lot of the fun. You miss out on a lot of the messy stuff. You miss out on the after parties. You miss out on all of this stuff, but you always get home safe, because you've got your own transport to get yourself there. Also, I was very selfish and very stingy about giving people lifts. I did give people lifts in the beginning when I first got my driving license. And then I realised what a fuck about it was, and that people would drag you all over the fucking West Midlands, taking you to places they sometimes wouldn't even know the way. They'd be like half asleep in the back and they wouldn't know the way. And in the end, I was like, look, I don't give lifts. I don't. I want to be able to come in when I come in. I want to be able to leave when I leave. I'm the only one staying driving sober. Therefore, I bloody well say when I leave. And that's that. I don't give lifts. And that also means you don't end up in the car with anyone shady. You don't end up, getting kind of rerouted off to some weird after party with people you don't know in the car. Like, your car, your sacred space, you take it wherever you want to take it. Obviously, not everyone has their driving license. Not everyone has their own car. Not everyone wants to be driving sober or can be driving sober when they go out. In which case, I would say technology, the technology of the modern era is kind of your saving grace. That if you've got someone you trust, whether it's a family member, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a friend, like whatever you've got, that you can maybe share your location with, like all night while you're out, in case anything goes wrong, in case you need to ping them in any way. They can see where you are at every point. I would do that. Obviously, keep your phone with you. Make sure your phone is charged. If you've got like a backpack or anything, and you can stick a battery pack in there so that your phone is definitely not going to die, that would also be good. An Uber. Definitely make sure that you've got like the money in your account. You can get an Uber. All of this, that your route in and out is planned. This was another thing I never did. Was like I was not really much of a one for pulling all-nighters, like going down to Slimelight in London, which a lot of people from Birmingham would do, that they would go down on like the last train. They would go to Slimelight and they would just plan to stay at Slimelight from like 11:30 until about 7 a.m. And then they'd hop on the train and come all the way back home. I did that one time, ever, because the amount of things that are likely to go wrong if you're in a club for that long, you're likely to end up pretty wasted. And if something goes wrong and you're like, I don't know, like 250 miles from home, and you can't get home until the trains start again in the morning, and something goes wrong round about 2 a.m, the trains don't start till 7, what the fuck are you gonna do? All that kind of stuff played on my mind, so I didn't really do that. The one time I did do Slimelight, we had Crash Space, we had a friendship group down there. I had my boyfriend at the time who I went down with, so it was a whole different experience. It wasn't just me rocking down there and going, yeah, I'm just going to stay in this club for like the next 8 hours. So again, like you miss out on a lot of the fun if you're going to be a bit control freaky about these things, but it does keep you safe. Because to get on to the common theme when it comes to friends who have sadly ended up in situations where they've been graped, the common theme tends to be that they are people who don't really participate in substances and they don't really drink. The victim blaming thing makes me so angry, because the portrait that is painted of grape victims is that they're messy girls, they're messy drunken girls who don't care and all of this, and it couldn't be further from the truth. In the girls that I know that it's happened to, they are girls who are not used to drinking, they are not used to partying, they don't really do that stuff. A lot of the girls I know, they've come from like an eating disordered background, so they lost their youth to their ED. They didn't get to go out and party because they were ED. They were at home, alone, sick, miserable. And then when they finally recovered, whether that was fully or partially, and they thought, I'm going to finally have a life. I'm going to go out and I'm going to have a life. So they did, and they went out and they drank. And they weren't used to drinking, and they didn't have a tolerance, and they didn't know their limits, and they didn't know their tolerance, and they didn't know how trusting you get when you're drunk and how spontaneous you get when you're drunk. So I would say if you are planning to go out and drink or imbibe any kind of substance, this is a weird one, but I would say it would be a good idea to experience booze or that substance in a safe, controlled environment first. Like I know I'm being the fun killer here, particularly if we're talking about something like Molly, and everyone wants their first time to be at a big rave and for it to be like fireworks and shit. But genuinely, if you don't know how your brain chemistry is going to respond to a drug, you could be setting yourself up for any kind of horrific experience if you don't know whether it agrees with you or not. And I think just knowing how your body and your brain reacts to something, and where your limits are and all of that stuff, learning that stuff in a controlled environment. So ideally with a good friend or a trip sitter or whatever, get used to these things first, know your limits before you go out, because friends who've gone out and they've not known these things about booze, they've gone out and they've drunk, and alcohol is such a deceptive thing. It really is, particularly if you've only had beers or something, and you can chug down like a couple of beers and then you're kind of wasted. And then spirits come into the equation and you think, well, this tiny little shot that tastes of like appletini candy, like this can't do much to me because it's only this big. Just the same as drugs. My first time with Molly, I was like, this pill is this big. How can something this big really do anything to me? And obviously it does. It can. So it's quite understandable to not really realize, oh, just take some of these things, that they taste like candy. They can't really be fucking me up that hard. And before you know it, you are fucked up that hard. But the music's playing and it feels like everyone around you's drunk and it feels like you can be spontaneous and you can be in the moment. And so girls I know have ended up wasted and they've ended up kind of wandering outside for a cigarette or something, and that's where they've met a guy who is charming and lovely, and they get talking and he seems trustworthy, and they don't know their limits and they don't know that they're too wasted to make good judgment calls right now. And like say, they spent their youth being ED'd. They spent their youth alone at home. They don't know how malicious, how manipulative, how fucking evil people can be. So they've trusted these guys when these guys have been like, oh, I've got a hotel room just up the road. It's kind of loud here. It's kind of smoky. Like these people are getting kind of rowdy. Do you want to just, hang out for a bit? And they think they can trust him. So they go upstairs and, it's a tempting offer. They're wearing heels. Their feet hurt. They want to sit down. This guy seems lovely. They lost their youth to their ED, and now here's this lovely guy and he's looking at them the way they've always dreamed of being looked at, and their feet hurt and they want to go sit down and chill. And he's like, well, we'll get some pizza, we'll watch a thing, and it sounds lovely. So they go, and then they end up in a room where no one can hear them scream. And things happen that they can never forget. And I don't, obviously I know more of the details about things that have happened to people, and I don't want to go into it, because it's their business, and I don't want to make this a super traumatic video for anyone. But this is how easy it can be if you're not completely aware of your own limits and you're not acting on maximum suspicion mode, which almost no one is acting on maximum suspicion mode when they're drunk and when they're not used to nightlife and when they're not used to how evil people can be, and they think they can trust this lovely guy who's outside sharing a cigarette with them. And it's as simple as that, and it's as quick as that a night can turn around from being like, oh, this is great, I'm finally out in the world drinking and partying, and oh my god, here's this guy and this guy's showing interest in me and he's so lovely, and oh my god, we're going to go and get some pizza, and then your worst nightmare. And for some of my friends, it hasn't even just been one guy. It's been, they've gone up there and there's more of them waiting. And I don't know the details beyond that. And I don't think I want to know, because it's too horrible to think about as it is. So yeah, obviously, there's all the other things as well, like watching your drink. With me, with going out to clubs, I always used to be this is another thing I got so lucky with. I always used to be so careless about watching my drink in clubs. I always used to just feel that, this is a goth club. No one gets spiked at a goth club. Like, it's fine. So I would always just have some of my drink, leave it on the side while I was dancing, pick it back up, drink out of it. These days I am super paranoid, but mostly because of the fact that I do have chemical sensitivity issues. I can't take stimulants anymore. I can't even drink caffeine anymore. So I know that even if someone did like a friendly spiking, where someone just throws like an ecstasy pill in your drink and goes, oh, we'll have a good time together kind of thing. It's like, maybe ask me first. That would really fuck me up. So now I'm super paranoid about my drinks. Like, if I buy a drink, I will drink all of it before I go and dance. And then I just have water that I carry around. And if I've ever set the water down, my next stop when I pick it up is to go back into the bathroom, tip it down the sink, swill it out really well and refill it from the tap. And then I've got fresh water that I can trust. And I will just keep doing that. Every time I go and dance, I will get rid of my water afterwards. You do have to be this paranoid. I'm afraid you do have to be this paranoid. Something to add to that. If the person you are around is male and or is strong enough to physically overpower you, if they are very, 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 very wasted and you know they fancy you, I would be wary of getting into a bed with them, even if you think, oh, you know, things are platonic, or, oh, you know, we're dating and he would never force himself on me. If he is absolutely fucking 50 shades to the wall and he doesn't know what's going on, you might want to sleep somewhere else, because the 2 times that have been the scariest for me and have been the closest that I have come to really having someone force themselves on me have been 2 times, 2 different exes. One of them I was dating at the time, one of them I'd recently broken up with. But in both cases, it was fucking freaky. Like, that they were in this kind of semi-dream state. And I don't know what they thought was going on. I don't know who they thought I was. I don't know if they thought they were dreaming. But in this like groggy zombie way, they were just on me. And they were, particularly one of them was a lot heavier than me. So he was pinning me down. And I actually had to punch him. I did actually have to punch him to get him off me. And then I fucked off out of there and went and slept in the living room. And I'm so glad that he had enough pain receptors left that punching him in the ear was enough to get him off me, because he was very strong. The other one, again, I tolerated being poured at for a while. I was trying to shake him awake and he was not waking up. And again, I managed to shove him off me and get out of there and went and slept in a different bed. And neither of them had any memory of doing anything wrong in the morning. So if they fancy you, however much you trust them, because I trusted both of these guys completely. I know that both of these guys in a sober state would never do anything to hurt me. Like, now, then, ever. But they were not in their right mind. And it was quite scary. So always have an escape plan. Always have somewhere else you can sleep if shit gets weird. And have an escape plan that's safe to get back, please. If you're somewhere where night buses still run and you are someone who is assigned female at birth, I don't want you riding the fucking night bus home. I don't. And obviously, this doesn't just go for AFAB people. Like, if you are in any vulnerable minority at all that's liable to be attacked, whether you're a person of colour, whether you are trans, whether you are a cis guy, but you are simply quite small and quite young and not good at defending yourself, obviously, SA is not the only thing that can happen to you out there. Violence is another thing that can be terrible. I don't know if I've talked about this on here before, but 2 of my 3 brothers have been really quite badly beaten up when they were younger, purely for looking alternative. So this is another thing. If you're out there looking alternative anyway, you are at risk, you know. And when it comes to my brothers and what happened to them, they were both in groups of guys and girls when this happened, and the girls were untouched. There was like a level of some sort of morality in these people that they were like, oh, we don't hit girls, but the guys were fair game. I will never forget coming home from a weekend away and there was just blood all over the bathroom carpet. It looked like my brother had been throwing up blood all over the place. Unfortunately, he didn't have internal injuries. He'd just been beaten up so much that he'd swallowed so much blood that he was puking it back up again. Ambulances were involved. Fortunately, everyone was fine, but the perpetrators were never caught. Would it have been a Sophie type incident? You know, the girl who was beaten to death for being goth, would it have been that if he had been further from home and he hadn't been able to get away? I don't know. So, you know, this isn't just about SA and AFAB people. Like just beware people in general when they are drunk and they are rowdy and they are on a late night train or a night bus, or you've got to walk through the city centre. Like, if you can afford to get a taxi, even if it's like a silly little, 5-minute journey that avoids you walking through the centre of town at night, like, err on the paranoid side. I seriously would, if you can possibly afford it. My parents, although they were very lenient with me and they were like, yeah, sure, go clubbing at the age of 14, 15, that's fine, here's some booze money, off you go. Despite all of that, they would always give me a lift home. They were never going to leave me to like sleep on a park bench all night until the train started running in the morning. They were never going to leave me to get the creepy night bus home. And I'm so grateful for that, because I do know people who have had scary things happen. The night bus is not a place where any young female alone should be, in my eyes. If you can't get like a reputable taxi ride or a lift off someone you trust, it might not be time to go out yet. It might be time to save up until you do have the taxi fare home. Like, I don't want you on a fucking night bus. And when it comes to taxis and all of that stuff, obviously, hopefully, if you're getting an Uber or you're getting something reputable like that, hopefully you're going to be all right. But we all know that you do get weird taxi drivers, and you get worse than weird taxi drivers. So again, modern technology, please, please, please be sharing your location with someone when you get in a taxi. Particularly if you get any kind of weird vibe at all, share your fucking location, or start recording, start fucking streaming live on something if you have to, start video calling someone, whatever you can do to just put them off and make yourself seem like less of an easy target. Obviously, the other thing is body language and all of that kind of shit, that if you have to walk any distance down any kind of road that looks kind of dark and shitty and suspicious, you want to be walking, looking as confident as possible. Do not be, hunched, scurrying down this road looking all kind of hunched and nervous. You don't want to look like an easy target. You need to be standing up straight with your shoulders back, walking down. If you see anyone following you, this is the time that whatever you have to do to act as crazy as possible and be as loud and as difficult as possible, don't make yourself an easy target. But ideally, in the age of Ubers and stuff, hopefully you can summon something to you, and the age of having to walk miles through dodgy bits of town, hopefully that's mostly over for most people. If you do find yourself at a party, an after party, whatever, and you're surrounded by people that you don't know that well, even if you want to be drinking and all of that, please take it slowly. Have a glass of water that you're kind of intermissioning sips of water with alcohol. And ideally, if you don't know these people very well, have a look around the room and just see, like, is there anyone who does seem kind of trustworthy, that if I start to feel weird, if I start to feel like maybe someone has slipped me something, or I just start feeling too drunk, too high, whatever, is there someone who seems kind of trustworthy? And I would say look around you for a slightly older female, or someone who just, gives off like a bit of a maternal vibe. I would look for someone like that and keep your eye on them. Keep an eye on where they are. And if things start feeling fucking weird, because this is the thing with spiking. Like, I have never experienced personally being spiked. I've never even recreationally experienced GHB. I've never taken that. The withdrawal effects scare me too much. But having experienced things like ketamine, opiates, benzos, all of that kind of stuff, I would say, obviously with spiking, it's a very small window that you're going to have where you're going to be like, I feel fucking weird, and then your memory's just going to be gone and you're going to be in a blackout. But hopefully you get just about enough time to go, no, something's wrong here. And this is why I say, if you're going to be drinking, if you're going to be taking any kind of substance, you want to be kind of familiar with that substance before you put yourself out there in the world, particularly if you're going to be alone. You do not want to be alone on an untested substance in a club or a party with people you don't know. Fuck that. You want to be familiar with what you're on, how it feels, how you cope with it personally, so that you know if something is going wrong and you know that this is weird, this is something that it shouldn't be, or even you just start to know that something is going sideways, something is affecting me in a way that I don't like, and I'm going down a bad trip rabbit hole and I don't like this, and it's time to start looking for that trustworthy person you hopefully pinpointed earlier and go to them and, you know, say, look, I'm young, I don't really know these people and I feel really fucking weird. I think someone slipped me something, or I think, you know, I've taken something that's wrong. Can you help me get home? Can you help me get to a hospital? Whatever you think is the thing to do in that situation. And hopefully you've pinpointed the right kind of person and they will get you out of there. But if you don't see anyone around you that you feel is trustworthy at that point, honestly, even before you start drinking, you start imbibing. If you're at a party and there's no one around you that looks trustworthy, that is not a party you want to be at. It just isn't. Like, I don't give a shit if you look up to these people, if you want to be a part of these people's scene. If you just feel a general aura of untrustworthiness around them and you just don't feel comfortable, you don't feel there's anyone you could really lean on in that place, I don't think that is your place and I don't think those are your people. And I think it's time to listen to your instincts, hop in an Uber and fuck off. Like I say, you know, being paranoid and missing out on a lot of fun is the thing that has kept me safe from so many of the horrific things that have happened to my friends. There is always a balance. There is always a compromise. You are going to have to miss out on certain things if you want to keep yourself safe. And you know, even if you are as careful as you can be, like, things can still happen to you. There is no guarantee of safety. You know, when you go out to anything, there is no guarantee of safety. If you've gotten yourself into this place where there's no one around you that you can trust and you're starting to feel weird, this is when you want to have someone you can trust who you can call at that time. Even if it's like 2:00 in the morning, there needs to be someone you can call. If you're going to be going out alone and you're going to be putting yourself in weird situations, there needs to be someone you can call, whether it's your mom, whether it's your dad, whether it's an aunt, an uncle, a sibling. There needs to be someone you can call and say, hey, I'm going to ping you my location. I think I've been spiked. Help. Even if that's all the words you can get out, hopefully that should be enough to get someone there who can look after you, and hopefully nothing awful will happen to you that night. And I know this sounds quite paranoid, but the amount of friends I've got that horrible shit has happened to, and I don't even think I'm unusual in that. I don't think I'm unusual. I think if anything, I'm the fucking unusual one in that nothing truly horrendous has ever happened to me personally. You know, I mean, I've got my fair share of, you know, sexual abuse type stories, but I have never had anything horrendous happen to me, particularly going out at night. And I know statistically I am the exception when it comes to this. When you see a room full of women and someone says, right, everyone put your hand up, whoever's been raped, whoever's been sexually abused, all the fucking hands go up. Eventually, you know, particularly by the time people are about my age, it is very, very rare for anyone to have their hand down, and to have got through life completely unscathed. So you do have to be a bit paranoid. If you're autistic and you're awkward and you're not good at making friends, you can still go out and you can still have an amazing time and you can find your people, or you can just dance and you can have a wonderful time. But the flip side of that is this video. If you're there by yourself, you have to be your own fucking guard dog, and you do have to be quite paranoid. And to exemplify that, here is me effing off home from Resistance Festival last year, because even at my big age and with the amount of clubs and parties and festivals I've been to, I have realised no one else on this planet is going to look out for me, so I have to be the one to do it. And this is especially true if you are in a club solo. Like, if you find yourself getting wasted there, you can't lean into that shit. You can't just go, woo, I feel messy, like, let's get really messy. No one else there in that club is going to have your best interests at heart. You have to be the one to make the boring adult decisions and go, look, I'm fucked. I shouldn't be here. I don't trust being here. I don't trust everyone around me to look out for me. I'm going to go home and be a weird little fish in my hotel room, which is how I spend a lot of time at festivals because of this weird hyper-independence trauma response that I don't trust other people when I'm wasted. It does ruin the fun, but it stands a pretty good chance of keeping you safe. So you do have to kind of learn to be your own strict best friend if you're going to be going out clubbing alone. Paranoid is better than graped. And I guess with all of that said, if anyone else has any tips or anything that they think I've missed out, and there's probably loads, please leave them below. I know there was a company who were trying to develop a nail polish that if you dipped it in a drink and there was anything fishy in that drink, the nail polish would change colour. I don't know whether that ever reached completion and went to the shelves, but if it is a thing, I would be intrigued to hear, because that sounds very useful. Some people were against it because they were like, well, that's going to get used as victim blaming. You know, the next time there's a grape case, it's going to be like, well, why weren't you using the nail polish? Or like, blah, blah, blah. I can see that angle, and I hate that I can see that angle. But I think, unfortunately, you've got to live in the world of realism, not idealism. And in the world of realism, there are a lot of evil people. And if there's one tiny thing you can do to make yourself a little bit more safe, whether that's nail polish, whether that's carrying pepper spray, whatever it is, I would do it, you know. And speaking of pepper spray, one of the shit things about the UK is that you are not allowed to carry anything for self-defense apart from an alarm. And if your area is anything like my area, alarms go off all the time and no one gives a good goddamn. So that's pretty much useless. And that's quite scary, because I think I would feel a lot safer if I was allowed to carry a taser or something. You're not over here, you're not. And that's some fucking bullshit. But anyway, I think I've waffled enough. Hopefully some of this made sense and was vaguely helpful. And if any of this shit has happened to you already, I am so, so sorry. And again, I hope this doesn't sound like in any way saying, oh, you weren't careful enough or you brought it on yourself or anything like this. Like, no. As I say, it's happened to so many friends, and in every case, I could see myself doing exactly the same thing as they'd done. Like, it was perfectly reasonable that they would trust whoever they trusted or get into the taxi with whoever they got into. All of these things. It was so understandable and so fucking unfortunate and more bad luck than anything. And I say it's never your fault. Anyway, yeah, this is a waffle, and a bit of a dark waffle. I'm going to shut up now. Stay safe out there. If you do go goth clubbing alone, keep yourself safe. Okay, I'm going away now. Bye bye.